Hello, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. This is Pierre Sebran from the IEC Central Office speaking here. In fact, in collaboration with the group of Catherine and on her request, we have been asked to prepare a presentation on the systems committees, and this is what will be done right now by Jim Matthews. So I guess that almost everybody knows Jim. He has been the chairman of the Standardization Management Board for the last six years, and he's also been working into standardization for many years. And while he was chairman of the Standardization Management Board, he was really the initiator of the systems approach in the IEC. Now, Jim, okay, so I would like also to ask to everybody to mute themselves. So please, can you mute yourself? And please, during the presentation, keep muted. The presentation is planned to last about 20 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session where you can also ask questions. So thank you for just muting yourself for the moment. Okay, so Jim, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Pierre, and thank you, everyone. I am very happy to be here and have a chance to do this, and this is really your time to try to ask questions and understand some of the activities and things that are going forward. I have to give a lot of credit to Pierre and his colleagues as they are working diligently to try to move all of these things forward in the background. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I think we've got participants from all over the world, and that's a good thing because it's nice to have a lot of interest in this activity. I wanted to talk about, as Pierre said, about 20 minutes. And we will go forward and then give you a chance to ask and answer as many questions as possible. I have no time constraints. I know some of you do because it's very early, very late, or in the middle of your morning. But first, why is the IEC using a systems approach? What do we mean by system? What kind of processes have we put in place? Where is some of the reference information that's necessary? Talk a lot about the collaboration and teamwork that needs to take place between all of the different structures of the IEC, and then a little bit about what's next. Right? So we talked about the fact that over the years, products have become many more functions that are not necessarily what they were originally intended for or designed for, but the capability of all these technologies give us a lot of things we can do with what used to be a conventional telephone and is now a mobile device, mobile communication. It's music, it's photos, video, internet, connections through various protocols, screens that have different functions, different interfaces to go with information and pictures to and from memory sticks and memory cards and other things. And so what's happened is that in the background, the days of a one-to-one linkage between a technical committee and the product standards they write have really eroded and gone because the world has changed around us, new technologies and new things have come into play. So we had a group that defined what a system is for our purposes, and there are lots of people out there with definitions for systems. These are not mutually exclusive, but in general we want to talk about a group of interacting and interrelated or interdependent elements. So things that are units in themselves but work with other units to do functions. They form a purposeful whole, and they have a complexity that requires specific structures and work methods. And the order to support applications and services relevant to IEC stakeholders. So this is how we define a system as we go now. We see lots of convergence among technologies. There are a lot more large-scale infrastructures beginning to take place. Just look at smart cities, for example. And we see the need for things that in the past were maybe islands or silos or independent functions to now suddenly work together. What happens in one is dependent on data, information, or a precedent that happens from another. And there are many new and emerging markets, and there are both product and application-focused standards. Standards that describe products and how they work, and then standards that describe applications or how a nesting or connection of products work. And as we talked about, there are ever-increasing number of technologies and standards that become involved. So we wanted to try to look at what could be done to encourage this new technology approach, and part of it was looking at traditional TCs working with other TCs. We felt like a lot of that had reached some limits in terms of what could really be done, but of course in many cases there are always examples where enlightened leaders, TC secretaries, TC chairs, and others are trying very hard to overcome what I will call procedural limitations and do the work in a collaborative way with other groups. But we felt that as the organization there was a need for a bigger collaboration platform and a need for recognizing the fact, as the last master plan talked about, that the IEC needs to work with other standardization organizations, take some of the large complex problems like smart cities or smart manufacturing. No one organization, no one group has all the pieces and all the answers, and for there to be a rational process and good interaction for the industries involved, there has to be outreach to other standardization organizations. We have to find a way to work with ourselves and a way to work with others. So we started to look at a top-down approach, looking at the system and how things are put together, rather than pulling the product pieces together. We had to have a way to address complexity. We had to ensure that the pieces would work with each other. And that means things like defining use scenarios. How are these things used in what area? In a medical sector, it may be different than an industrial sector. In a city area, it may be different than a developing economy. But we needed to look at all these interfaces and scenarios and say, how is it that the pieces work together? And then how do we begin to think about a way to standardize some of the rules and the ways they interface together? So we looked at this, that this group, these systems activities, have to engage the technical committees. We absolutely said this is not intended to be groups telling other TCs what to do. And so that was the first paramount thing that we came up with. They have to be complementary and not competing. They will not duplicate work of the other. The SMB is very vigilant about trying to sort that out and working to make sure. And I know there have been some issues emerging in a couple of areas where specific TCs feel like they have basically a wide domain of work, and it opens up very broadly, and they don't need the systems activity to begin to interfere with their work. But in reality, because of these complexities that are taking place among industries and technologies, perhaps we need to look at this. The intent is that TCs are actively participating in this process. It's not an island. The systems work has to be involved with the technical committees, and the technical committees have to be involved with the systems group. And a work plan has to become a collaborative result where everybody sits around the table, people from TCs affected, people from other organizations outside the IEC, and the IEC systems folks all together come up with a plan and an approach, and everybody takes away ownership in that plan and goes back and tries to implement their part of the for their responsibility in their area. So we have three group types for systems. We have the Systems Evaluation Group, the SYC or Systems Committee, and a Systems Resource Group, which I'll talk more about in a few minutes. So the SEG, SYC, and SRG are words you hear a lot about, and we'll talk a little bit about what each one of those are. The Systems Evaluation Group is a new and kind of very novel experiment for the IEC, because what's different is it's an open group. And in that sense, all you have to do is go to a web page, fill out your interest and your contact information, and click Submit. And unless there is some significant mismatch, you will be automatically put into membership in the Systems Evaluation Group. Now, those of you from national committees say, wait a minute, we appoint experts. Well, these are not experts. This is a collaborative forum. You will get notified whenever one of your folks joins an SRG, and hopefully you'll reach out to those folks as a part of the national process. And if they're new technology and new sectors of people, bring them back into the process and help them to join your national effort with the other experts and people involved from the country. But this is generally, the SEG is the first stage of a two-stage systems activity. We'll talk in a minute about whether or not it's absolutely necessary to be a systems activity or if it leads to something else. The group is designed to evaluate if the systems approach is relevant. It does that by drawing a large selection of people, and Vimal's group on low voltage DC is a perfect example, where we have several hundred people involved, and I don't remember if it's 40% or 60%, I'm sorry I get the number mixed up, but a significant number of people are people who have not been involved in IEC work before, but are now contributing actively to the low voltage DC work. And that's our intent, is to go out and broaden our base in the sense that in this area, you as the national bodies get access to new stakeholders and new technologies and industries, and we as the IEC benefit from a broader and more open discussion. It has to identify the community, find those stakeholders, and bring them into the process. And these groups, if they do their job right, are supposed to define the general architecture and the boundary of what system it is that's being discussed and where the work should be done. We give these groups about a 2-year lifetime to try to do their work and complete things, and then make a recommendation, and the SMB ultimately makes a decision about where to go from there in terms of what group or structure is needed after this work. Now, the thing to remember is most people think that, hello? If you would, please remember to keep your phone on mute. There was somebody with some background noise that was dragging across the phone. This can result in lots of different types of groups, and it doesn't necessarily mean that every time we create an SEG, there's going to be a systems group, and I'll show you that exactly why in a moment. First, though, there is a systems committee. Once we're ready to go forward and do work, it's a specialized committee working at the systems instead of the product level. And they define reference architectures, use cases, appropriate standards and guidance, and functionality and interaction of the system within the scope of their charter. And the SYC can publish international standards just like a TC or an FC, as well as all other IEC deliverables. So we see that there are lots of different possibilities. The SEG does not have publishing power. The SYC, the Systems Committee, works very much as a conventional TC, except we put a little bit of strength into the liaison requirement, saying that using liaisons. Okay, I'm showing that my audio has dropped. Can anyone hear me?
Yes. Tim, we can hear you loud and clear. No problem.
No problem. Okay, I just want to be sure I didn't drop out. So a systems committee can publish standards and works very much like a TC, but it's sort of a TC, an advisory committee, and a strategic group all rolled into one. And we said that for liaisons, they have to be active liaisons. They can't be passive. Just sign me up and send me a report is not acceptable. There has to be a lot of discussion. And it operates at the same level as a TC. So that's important in the sense that these groups are not above the TCs. They're not over them telling them what to do. They're not under them with TCs telling them what to do. We're working in a very collaborative environment. Everybody is a peer. We try to reach consensus, and that's an important process. The one distinction, which is very different, is because these domains touch many different TCs, and national committees have strong interests with their industry and secretariats of the TCs, we said we put the secretariat with the central office. So we have a neutral person who is there working with all the TCs and SCs, rather than having someone with a national position that may or may not favor or unconsciously favor one of the other key TCs over others in the spectrum of the group. So to begin to establish in the system committee, you have to have a proposal. The proposal is to evaluate a technical area. The SMB launches a systems evaluation group. We have pretty much said you must have a systems evaluation group before you can have a systems committee. And then the SEG reports to the SMB over 1 to 2 years. And the SMB decides and launches a new systems committee, and that's done by the voting of the countries of the IEC using the new committee form. So it is no different than launching a new technical committee. All of this is done in the background with a systems resource group that is working to assist and guide the work of all of these levels of the activity and provides feedback and information. But as I said earlier, having an SEG does not automatically mean there's a systems group. Things that have and can happen from an SEG could be that an existing TC addresses the work at hand. You look at the activities, you look at the cluster of experts, you decide there's already a TC that can address this, or a couple of TCs. Or we could form a new TC or subcommittee. We could form a new advisory committee and transform the work that's there into an advisory committee role. Or a systems committee does get formed, or the work could be assigned to an existing systems committee. So it is obviously necessary to have an SEG and then create a systems committee, but not all SEGs will become systems committees. And so this table actually shows where things have gone. For example, smart energy has gone through the strategic group, the SEG, and then systems committees. Smart cities just started as an SEG. Active assisted living did the same as smart energy. Low voltage DC has gone this traditional path, and there is a current vote pending for making a systems committee on LVDC. The one on mobility for electric vehicles, we didn't have sufficient interest from constituents, so we folded that into Smart Energy Systems Committee. Energy efficiency went from a strategic group right to an advisory committee, as did UHV technologies, ultra-high voltage. Non-conventional and disruptive microgrids is on proposal for the SMB to decide in February to become a subcommittee in TC8. Manufacturing, smart manufacturing, is currently in the SEG stage, but may go forward. Robotics went directly to an advisory committee. Communications technology is proposed, creating an SEG. And then new proposals for things like wearable smart devices became a new technical committee. So if you want more information, you can go to the IEC website and look under systems work, about the IEC, what we do, and systems work. And this will talk about the broader things that we've talked about this morning or this afternoon. And then specifically under the Standardization Management Board, where you find all the groups that are reporting into the Standardization Management Board under management structure, you will find a page on systems work. It lists the current systems evaluation group, systems committees, and the systems resource group, a lot of explanation of their roles, and links to each of the individual groups. So both of these sites on the IEC website are useful places to get a lot more information. If you look at the IEC website also, you'll find the Smart Grid Standards Map. And this was a tool that was developed for the Smart Grid work and has proven very, very successful in giving you lots of ways to look at, find, and identify all the standards, not just IEC standards, that are relevant to the activity. Our challenge, and there's a group working within the IT and the Systems Resource Group and within the IEC staff to try to extend this tool and make it usable for smart cities, active assisted living, smart manufacturing, and more, because we think this tool actually has value across many, many different disciplines. With that, then, the Systems Resource Group that I mentioned before, it's worth mentioning something about this as well. It's a unique group populated by experts with systems architecture and use cases and terminology and semantics. They are what I refer to as the systems geeks. Mani Padangam is a very capable leader who is taking this group in a direction to try to build our capability. They're working on development and the use of system tools and software applications and ways to share the best practices within the groups. And they're populated by both volunteers and the IEC staff. Now they have a vision and strategy that looks at putting all these pieces into place and looking at how to begin to build the capability up across pieces of the IEC. They're working in 3 areas. One is a guide, which is a way to analyze complex systems and how to really approach things. This is going to be, I think, very strongly awaited and will be very high value to all of us. The second are the tools. They'll be keepers of the toolbox and figuring out how to do a repository for all the things that are needed for doing systems work. And then the third is supporting the activities across the IEC with training, consulting, and application support, and providing a way for feedback and other activities to get this work in the hands of the experts at the systems level. Now, reference information, just so you know, this is in the ISO IEC directives in the IEC supplement. And in NXSP, there is a set of rules and guidelines and procedures that are there that are already incorporated in the directives. This is the 2016 edition of the supplement. It's on the IEC website. So you can also find information there. And it's really, I think, most important to begin to look to people. There are some industries that are like aerospace and others that have long used the systems approach, but some of our product and component groups have not. And one of the challenges for all of us, especially the national committees, as you look for experts and as you look for people to bring into the process, is to try and reach out to those people that we haven't been talking to and that do think of things from the big picture and the way things interact. So there's collaboration and a strategic perspective that's very important. It's not enough just to know how my part fits in the clock. I need to know how the clock works as a whole, and those are the experts we want to try to bring to the IEC work. So what's next is there is an ad hoc group from the SMB working to explore any needed clarifications. We'll talk about things like TCs doing some work on systems, like the wind turbine group is doing work on systems within their TC, but it's all within the domain of their TC versus the systems groups. We'll talk about any kind of special deliverables, documents, or products that are needed for the systems work. Some clarifications perhaps needed for rules and process, and considering broadening what we call an SEG, a systems evaluation group, to include evaluation of technologies as well. That's been a recommendation from one of the groups in the SMB. We certainly want to understand better national committee participation in systems work. Would love to have some more information from you in terms of how to find, recruit, and bring people at this level, and finding systems-oriented experts with the systems approach in mind, bring them to the work. The systems resource group, as I mentioned, is working on the guide and the outreach and training. So there's lots going on in this area. So now I will stop and ask for your questions, and if there is a train wreck or a rush of people in terms of the phones, please take turns. Pierre?
Okay, so Jim, thank you very much for this presentation. While the people were still connecting here to the webinar, I have now muted everybody, but you can, if you have any question, please unmute yourself and raise the question. Okay, at this point I
Hi,
don't...
Pierre.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Vimal Mahendru from New Delhi. Good evening to everyone, and thank you, Jim. While I've been involved with the SEG for LVDC for last 2 years almost, it's still very refreshing to know about the whole process. I just wanted to add an update to the slide which we had on evolutions. Last week, the council vote closed, and there has been an absolute majority vote positively for formation of the systems committee for LVDC. So you may consider that. I think that's another very interesting development. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimal. This talks about how things are moving so good in real time.
So maybe Jim...
Absolutely. Sorry, Pierre, just an add-on thought. We recently had our, last week, our SEG4 meeting, and interestingly, the feeling when we announced this in the meeting was that, great, we have a systems committee, now we'll start systems level work, but what happens to this body of experts? We have about 170 experts worldwide, half of whom are outside of the traditional IEC community. And I personally feel that there is ongoing value to be created with this body of work. And I think that may be one of the questions we could take up in ad hoc 70 to try and address how do we continue to keep this large body of work interested, even though when we move to systems work and we have national committee representatives and TC representatives on the systems committee. Thank you.
Well, Pierre, one of the things, Vimal, and for all the national committee folks who are on the call, we very much hope that these people who have been so involved in and committed to the work will come through you and now will become appointed as experts to projects and work in the new systems committee as it gets established. So please, I know they will try to reach to you, but please also reach out to the experts in your national domain and work and encourage them to join your work, become experts, and become active. There are no limits. There is no reason for a systems committee to be limited to 2 or 3 or 4 people from a particular country. Because we're dealing with complex issues, we want to encourage all these people to come to the work.
Yes. Yes. Maybe if I may also add on a little on this. As our audience is mainly also made of people working in the national committees, I think that also from the national committee's standpoint, we need to have some kind of a specific national mirror committees that where I would say these committees could be or should be a collaboration platform as well for the national mirror committees that are part of the systems committee. So there's maybe also here some further work to do on the national level to try to extend the systems approach we have on the international level. Jim, maybe you've got some thoughts about that.
Well, yes, I would absolutely encourage you, if you have not yet formed a mirror committee for each of the systems groups, the Systems Committee on Smart Grid, Smart Energy, and Active Assisted Living, and soon to be LVDC, please do just as you do for any other TC, and if possible, try to connect those with your mirror committees for the TCs that are in the family as well, so there's better communication at the national level. But the processes you use for forming a mirror committee for a TC should be adaptable and work just as well for a mirror committee for a systems committee. So please do form a national committee, mirror committee.
Okay. Any other question? Maybe Christina, I see you unmuted yourself. Do you have any question?
Yes, please. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. A clarification. You mentioned that at the system evaluation group level, you have a connection with our standardization body outside IEC. I mean ISO and other IEEE, somewhere else. When you have a system committee, what are the relations with these outside organizations?
Well, for now, they will be considered as liaisons. But that's one of the questions we need to look at as this ad hoc group of the SMB begins to look at ways to fine-tune the process. Is there something more that's needed to ensure those linkages stay in place? We think we can adapt the liaison process to make that work, but we'll be looking for and talking about whether or not there is more needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions then?
Okay, maybe so. I guess that if there is no other questions, maybe Jim just with Jim, then I think this is a very good presentation. I thank you very much for this. I'd like so really to thank you for having promoted and having put into place this systems approach. I think this is really the way to go for the future. And I invite all the people attending this meeting to really go back and support also the systems approach in there at the national level. Maybe I just let you finally conclude, please. And before, I'd like just to thank everybody for having joined this meeting, and I hope this was interesting for you. But okay, this is over to you, Jim.
Yep, thank you everyone, and if you do have questions, I'm more than happy to take them by email, and we can also work through the central office to try to maybe put out a set of Q&As if there are any that we did not have time to address in the webinar.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.